Hi, good morning, everyone. So today is 6th of March. Let me mark this date. 6th of March, 2023. And we will be starting with the second module of training, that is development. Now see, development normally is also known as customization. Rather, a more popular name for development is always customization. In Salesforce, whenever we are developing a product, if we are creating a product, we are working on a project. So normally the terminologies are like, whatever you would try to do without coding, wherever the coding is not involved, that particular portion of application development is something called as configuration. So whatever we have studied so far, like we have studied how we can create the objects, how we can map the relationship between them, how we can go and do something like some of the business automations like formula fields, roll-up summaries, validation rules. And we have also studied about the process builders and the workflows, although most probably in this year itself, they are going to be get decommissioned. Maybe with some upcoming release, Salesforce can announce that we would not be able to use workflows or maybe approval. So that is something we all are eagerly waiting when Salesforce is going to make this announcement for every one of us that now the process builder and workflows, they are no more going to be get used. So ultimately we will only left with one thing, and that is Salesforce lightning flows. I have decided that I would be taking one session onto that as well, lightning flows, and probably in certain weekends, wherever I got the time, I'm going to take one session, and I'm going to invite you and other batches as well onto this. Let's have a basic introduction about like how you can design the lightning flows, the kind of business automation what we have studied, like how we can send the emails, how we can update the fields, how we can do certain more things. So that we are going to study. Anyways, so every other thing, whatever you have learned so far, all of them, they fall into something called as configuration. They fall into a terminology called as configuration. So basically, when we say that I am configuring something inside Salesforce, that actually means I'm developing something, I'm creating something, I'm producing something as a part of business requirement, I'm producing something, but I'm not writing a code. I'm using some of extensive features, some of out-of-box functionalities of the Salesforce. Whatever Salesforce has given me, and by the way, Salesforce is that technology which is growing towards no code environment. Now, this is right now, it's not 100% possible, but I'm telling you one thing. We have now achieved one milestone via low code. When we talk about Salesforce, there are so many different, there are so many different abbreviations, there are so many different acronyms, there are so many different, what to say, I'm not getting the proper word for that, but जो चीजें होती ना जिससे आप जाने पहचाने जाते हो, जिसको जिसको कहते हैं कि हाँ, this is some of the extensive feature of this particular technology, उसमें से एक बात कही जाती है कि Salesforce is that technology which have minimum coding requirement, and you can develop some very complicated products. So even though those who are a non-coding guys, like if you are an engineer, you don't have to be always a computer engineer to become a Salesforce resource. You could be anyone, understand? Even if you are not from the engineering background, you're from some other technologies background, you're from science, you're from humanities, or you're from any other thing. If you have a little understanding about business, if you have a little understanding in the technology, then you could definitely go, you can definitely come into this technology, right? That is what is, what to say, the most important USP of Salesforce. And then it's covering almost all sort of business requirements. We could deal with every industry verticals. You would going to find Salesforce almost in every sort of industry. We can build up the customized products for them. That to be most of the things, most of the functionalities, most of the features of the Salesforce, they are available in non-coding. whatever you have learned so far. And Salesforce is motivated to try to build up everything without writing a code. So very soon in the coming days, every one of us going to witness this. एक वक्त जरूर ऐसा आएगा जिस दिन आप हम सभी लोग ये देखेंगे कि देखिए Salesforce में if you would develop a product, whatever the functionalities that would require, we are going to build that using non-coding. हो सकता है because see low coding तक तो हम पहुंच चुके हैं, ठीक है? With the introduction of lightning flows, we have achieved a very important milestone, something called as low coding. There are only few things left for which coding would be required. और ये चीज आप भी observe करोगे. See, I have taken, if I would go to your folder to explain you the non-coding, I have taken somewhere around 85 to 86 sessions. Some of them were short, very short, just one concept. I usually don't mix two concepts in the same session, right? So probably that, but I would consider like at least 70 hours, 86 session, but let me say at least 70 hours we have invested in making ourselves understand about the the non-coding features. But when we would understand now, because I'm going to start with development, you are going to learn how to customize the things and how to write the codes and different. It would be hardly 40 hours. That would go somewhere around 50 or maybe 60 sessions because there are few topics. I take it a little lengthy. There are few topics for which you would require only half an hour class. So basically is what, coding part is less, very less. There are only few concepts and that we have to understand. Non-coding is very big in Salesforce. So we have invested almost 85, 86 sessions, somewhere around 70, 75 hours, understanding those non-coding functionalities, those out-of-box functionalities of the features of Salesforce. And there were so many of them. But when we consider the customization, now customization is that word we use for coding. Configuration is that word we use for non-coding. Listen, write it down or yaad rakhenge. Configuration, we use it for non-coding. Customization is that word we use for coding. Coding is very limited, I'm telling you guys. There are only few of the things for which you would going to write down the code. And that to be, there was one of the most important feature of the Salesforce in the coding called as triggers. You would going to learn that. Triggers. But that ultimately, that everything what a trigger can do now can be implemented with the flows. So people have started doing everything with flows. They are making them habitual. They are making themselves habitual about not writing the code. There are few gray areas right now still. Let's say integration एक ऐसी चीज है. अभी, Salesforce is trying to develop something called as a MuleSoft. MuleSoft is one of the extensive application of the Salesforce, which would be the future of integration. But right now, at least, we are writing code for that. Batch programmings, you will going to learn what is a batch programs and all. Asynchronous program, schedulable program. So there are still few of the requirements for which you ultimately would have to write down the code. But Salesforce has started working on them. And sooner or later, but in coming days, the coding requirement would be very less, or sometime it wouldn't be required to write down any code. Okay, chaliye. But still there are few of the areas. Now let me highlight what are the things right now for which you have to write down the code. All right. So I'll go with something called as limitations of declarative customizations. Now, what does declarative customization? It actually means non-coding. Don't get confused with all terminologies. It actually means non-coding features, or maybe it actually means something called as configuration. Whatever you have studied so far was configuration. All right. So what are the limitations of those non-coding things, those configuration, those declarative customization? There are two sort of customization: programmatic, where you have to write down the code, you'll have to create a program. Another one is declarative, where you just have to declare something. And that declarative customization actually is what we have studied so far. But these are the words which are not generally used. Generally, we use customization, configuration. Customization, whereas configuration. All right, chalo. So see, when we go with the page layout, let me highlight few of the point. There are so many of theoretical things over here, and by the way, you will have to study this. ठीक है, ये exam नहीं होने वाला आपका, don't worry, but this is important for understanding. See, you guys are novice into this, all right? अभी अभी आपने शुरू किया है. आपको पता है मैं पूरा पूरा theory नहीं पढ़ सकता. I never do that. I cannot explain you line by line. है ना? तो theory is important for you. I will just pick up a point and I'm going to explain. मैं उस पे फोकस करूंगा जो मुझे लगता है कि ये समझाना ठीक है. But otherwise there are so many things which you actually would have to take care of all this. All right? चलिए. So let me talk about what are the limitations. What are these things? What are still there are few of the things what you cannot achieve with क्या बोलते हैं उसको आपका जो non-coding part है उससे. So the first thing is about page layout customization. See, when you go to a particular page, for example, we have developed few of these custom objects. है ना? अभी now we have all these fields inside this object candidate. I have arranged them in 2 fields. This is what is maximum I can do, right? If I would go and I would try to edit this layout. If I wanted to arrange the fields, I could maximum do this in the 2 columns only. I cannot do this in 3 columns, right? I cannot do this into 3 columns. This is what maximum is like. You know, if you wanted to, like, for example, if I would be introducing a section over here, see, if I would introduce a section, it gives me a facility that you can arrange the fields in a single column or maybe in 2 columns. But let's say I wanted to arrange the field that's in 3 columns, in 4 columns. Can I do that? No. No, it's not possible. Why? Because that is what is a limitation with this. But if let's consider I have this requirement, I wanted to, for any reasons, I wanted to arrange the fields in 3 columns. We cannot do this over here. With the page layout customization, we cannot do. But then with the Visual Force programming, or maybe with the Lightning page, LWC, you can do that. Let me try to show you something. I'll just stop sharing for a while. And let me try to show you something from one of my previous batches where I have created few of the Visual Force pages as well, wherein I tried for the same. Let me just try to make a login over there. I'll try to make a login. Yep. Yeah. So now see, I have created few of the Visual Force pages over here. Let me just try to get one of the example for you so that you are going to see that. Show all accounts, my account. I'll just see to this. I have created few Visual Force pages wherein I have arranged the fields in 3 columns. Now see this interface particularly. Great. Yeah. Do you see this interface? Do you see these sections? See, I haven't designed them. I haven't created them by the page layout customization. This one is a Visual Force page. First of all, it's a Visual Force page. All right. It's a Visual Force page. You can see over here, this is the coding. This is not all coding. And if you can see one thing over here in the Visual Force page, there is an attribute. Okay, there is a tag called as there's a tag called as Apex page block section. This is a tag. In that tag, there is an attribute called as column. I specifically has mentioned 3. I can make it 4, 5, 6, whatever, up to 10. Up to 10 columns you can introduce in a particular page. So we certainly don't have any such restriction that I should have only 2 columns on a field. But with the page layout customization, you cannot go beyond this. Maximum you could have only this. हाँ, जब आप programming में जाते हो, Visual Force is a programming. In the programming, you can design that kind of user interfaces where you can even arrange the fields in more than 2 columns. Like as you can see right now, this is first column, second column, and third column. All right, I have 2 columns. I have 2 columns. I can have 1 column. But this is completely customizable user interface. You can decide whatever you want. This is sort of coding. This is what sort of coding we generally have. Let me try to show you that as well. Yeah. So see, this is generally that coding, Visual Force. Okay. So this is what a Visual Force programming. And with this programming, with this programming, you can define how many columns do you want it to have onto user interface, which actually is not possible with your conventional page layout customization. Okay. And there are a few more things like tab home page. Whenever if you would land, for example, if I would go to accounts, see, this is something is called as tab home. Okay. You cannot make any changes over here. If you would expand quick access menu, you don't have anything such called as edit layout over. Edit layout comes when you are either into detail layout or you are either into edit layout. Okay. If you would click this new button, then you will going to see something called as edit layout. So if you are onto edit layout or you are onto detail layout, then you can customize. What about this? Particularly what this page is called. I will call this as tabs home page. This is for everywhere. Whenever you make a click into a tab, the initial interface that loaded this page, this is called as tabs home page. Do you have any option to customize this? Do you have any option? Can I do one thing like, can I, for example, can I bring that recent record section over here, reports above, or can I remove a section called as tools? Can I do that? No, you don't have any such options. This page is not customizable. All right. But that is the same thing. Again, you can achieve this with the Visual Force programming. With the Visual Force programming, you can even achieve the same thing. And not just with Visual Force programming, this actually can be done with the Lightning pages as well. You can design a Lightning page wherein you can control everything. And you can have something called as a Lightning tab. By the way, I don't have time to ask you a question, but how many different types of tabs? Can any one of you quickly answer this? Let me give you this command. How many different types of tabs we have in Salesforce? I will tell one answer: custom object tab. Like you created an object called as candidate position. And these are the tabs which we have created for the custom object. So they are called as custom object tab. By the way, how many different forms of tabs we have? Yes, come on. How many different forms of tab we have? Come on. Any answers? Any answers? बहुत बढ़िया चल रहा है. Very good. So there are 5 different types of tab: custom object tab, web page tab, lightning page tab, visual force page tab, and then lightning component tab. So there are 5 different types of tab. So if you have created a lightning page, you can create a tab as well for that. And that would be a whole new customization. And we don't have any such necessity to be, to depend on to this particular, this particular standard tabs. We don't have that. I mean, we can definitely customize the tab home page as well. So that is one of the gray area where, with non-coding, you cannot perform any sort of customization over here. But that could be done if you are doing certain programming, like if you're using a lightning page, LWC component, visual force page, visual force component, that could be customized. Then you cannot change colors, font styles. You cannot do anything over here. Even in the inside as well. I mean, if I wanted to change this color and the font, I cannot do, but I can do that with Lightning. In Lightning, we have, in LWC particularly, we have 3 different sort of files: HTML file, JavaScript file, and then a controller. Controller is Apex programming. Whatever you would be going to study right now would be an Apex programming. And that is used. See, there is no replacement to Apex programming. Understand one thing. Even if somebody would tell you कि आजकल Apex कौन use करता है, we use Lightning, तो उसको clarify करो कि whenever there is, even though if you are creating a Lightning component, let me try to open and show you something. Even though if you are trying to create a Lightning component, ठीक है, Lightning have 3 things. One Lightning component usually have 3 things. I'll try to show you something. See, one LWC. All right, one LWC component have 3 things. Do you see this? Okay. Let me close everything. So for an LWC component, even though if somebody would tell you कि अरे अभी तो LWC चल रहा है, Lightning चल रहा है, why you are studying and all, है ना? तो वो बेवकूफ को ये बताने का कि lightning is a combination of, if you would develop a lightning component, that is a combination of three things. First of all, the front end that is always created with an HTML file. Second is something called as client-side controller, which is always created with JavaScript. And if whenever you wanted to interact with Salesforce, right, there's something called as server-side controller, all right? That is always created with Apex. So there is no replacement to Apex. Let me tell you this. This is what this class is. So this is the front end. This is my front end. This is completely HTML code. Second is server side controller, whatever the things, this controller, this programming would execute inside browser, inside my browser itself. And this is that Apex code, the Apex which we are going to learn, abhi jo hum start kar rahe hain, that would connect this component to Salesforce. And if you would require anything where in the involvement of force.com, database.com, this controller is doing. So there is no replacement to Apex programming. Even though if you are developing everything in Lightning, there is no replacement to Apex. All right, understand. This is also one of the reasons why we are learning Apex programming. Even though I wanted to work on the latest technology, I wanted to create everything on Lightning, I would still require to learn Apex. So this is also one of the reasons. Even though I'm trying to implement everything in Lightning. But if you wanted to interact with Lightning, you wanted to create the interfaces in Lightning, Lightning would also require Apex. To build up something called a server-side controller. What is server? It's your runtime engines. That is Salesforce server, force.com platform, database.com. These all are like the component of servers, mostly two, force.com and database.com. This is what does it mean by a Salesforce server? So if you wanted to interact this component with server, if you wanted to interact this, you are building a component. See, whatever you are creating you are creating it for the Salesforce, right? You wanted this thing to get launched into Salesforce environment. If you wanted this should fetch the data or retrieve or perform a two-way communication with the Salesforce objects, you have to ultimately write down a code. This is completely an Apex. This is completely an Apex code. See, ye jitna bhi likha hua hai, this is completely an Apex code. So there is no exception to Apex. तो कोई भी अगर ये बोलता है कि why you are learning Classic, why you are learning Apex programming when nowadays everyone is using Lightning, that's true. He's absolutely true. But now to answer this question, why we are learning because Classic is the base of Salesforce, first of all. Classic is the base of Salesforce. If you branch yourself directly on Lightning, you wouldn't understand this, right? Classic is the base of Salesforce. That is the first thing. I wanted to make my base very clear. That is why I have learned Classic. Now to answer your second question, why we are learning Apex, there is no exception to Apex. Even though if I would create an LWC component, I'll have to, whenever I would require to make an interaction with Salesforce server, that is with force.com or either with database.com, I have to write down something called as server-side controller. And server-side controller can only be written with Apex programming. So this is the reason why we are learning development. And there are so many other reasons as well. We cannot have deduplication process. Like normally what happens is like, if you would, for example, I try to go with candidate and let me see. If I have this record, I clone and I save with the same details. See, one more record have been saved, right? I clone and I save with the same detail. So what is happening right now? Did Salesforce has stopped me? Did Salesforce has stopped me of creation for duplication of data? No. By default, Salesforce won't mind it. Why it won't mind it? Because understand, when I open with this record, the ID is different. When I open the second record, if I would open the second record, the ID is going to be get different. For Salesforce, they are all, even though if all of the field would have same values, for Salesforce they are different records. Why? Because the IDs are different. The IDs are different. So in short, as a default, Salesforce doesn't have anything to stop you from entering duplicate records. If you wanted that module to be get developed, we have to ultimately write down triggers or flows. So to implement the deduplication process, we have to write down the code. And there are so many other things as well. There are so many other things as well for which we require to code. We require to customize the things. So there are so many other requirements right now for which we have to go with coding. वैसे तो देखा जाए तो बहुत सारी चीजें नॉन कोडिंग से कवर हो जाती हैं. In most of the cases, 80% of your requirement. I'm telling you this. In most of the cases, in most of the product development, 80% of the requirements are covered with non-coding. There are always 20-30% scope in every project wherein you have to develop the customized modules where we have to go with the customizations. So there's always few of the things for which you have to go with customizations. Otherwise, most of the things in real-time product development as well, 70 to 80% of entire project development in terms of Salesforce, it goes with non-coding. हाँ, कुछ चीजें हैं अभी जिसके लिए आपको कोडिंग करना पड़ता है, बट वो बहुत थोड़ी हैं. ठीक है, तो just go with this entire theory and see, we are going to code in a language called as Apex. People usually ask, sir, do we require anything to learn Apex? Should we start learning C programming, C++, or any another language? I told to them, I'll say to them, no, there is no need to have any experience of programming to learn Apex. Apex, although is a completely object-oriented, a cloud-based object-oriented language, but if as a prerequisite, you don't have to learn anything. And don't do that unnecessary. You make things complicated for you, and it would seems like बहुत hard है ये, जबकि Apex बहुत आसान है. और क्यों आसान है, you will going to see this when we start doing the code. तुमको पता चलेगा कि most of the things, most of the functions what we use, most of the methods what we use, they are already present. They are already being present inside metadata. You just have to understand which method should we pull out from that. So in your complete program, there would always be a chances, there is always a scope that 50% of the things are ready-made. 50% of the things would be in your program. There would be 50% of the element जो कि पहले से मौजूद है. You just have to pull it out. हाँ, 50% तुम्हारा logic रहेगा उसमें. So Apex is that programming language we are going to start over here. What is an Apex? It's a cloud-based language. It's a cloud-based object-oriented language. When we say programming, see, programming, there are two types: procedure oriented, object oriented. Okay, procedure oriented and object oriented. Procedure oriented is almost gone. So with the language, those languages which falls into this category, they are almost gone. Like C programming, Pascal, COBOL. Okay, these are almost vanished. Now everyone is using something called as object oriented. C++ was the first object oriented, but now this has been enhanced. This has been improved in so many ways. So we are going to make a use of language called as Apex. Apex is a completely object-oriented language that to be a cloud-based. Okay, and you will going to understand so many things out of this. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to start directly with data types. Now, till data type, you would have to learn everything. जितना भी theory मैंने लिख रखा, I'm going to upload this today. Along with this video, I'm going to upload this file. है ना, तो इसको डाउनलोड करके रख लेंगे और ये पूरा आज पढ़ाई करेंगे. You're going to find one separate folder in your drive for development. I would require for that, yeah, obviously, I would going to require your email IDs. ठीक है, so after this lecture, every one of you just post me your email ID into your WhatsApp group. ठीक है, so I have created one separate folder in your drive, and I would be sharing this video and this file, and everything would be going to capped into this, right? And then last announcement would be like, start downloading those admin videos, because this month end, I would be removing that folder. So I have given you almost 1 month for this, right? So start downloading all 86 videos, because I would be going to delete that folder very soon. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining. I cannot take your questions right now.